Finovate showcases cutting-edge banking and financial technology through a global conference series featuring short-form demos and thought leadership. Now, the conversation continues on the Finovate podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Finovate podcast. We've got a fun one for you today. We are talking with Jean Pesme, Global Director of Finance at the World Bank. Jean, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Greg, and it's a pleasure to be with you. And good morning, good afternoon, everybody.
Excellent. So let's always start off with an introduction. Can you give us just a quick overview of yourself, your background, and your role at the World Bank?
So I'm the Global Director for the financial sector at the World Bank. Our job is to lead the work in the World Bank to build sound, stable, sustainable, and inclusive financial system. So it's one of the area of engagement of the World Bank. I am a financial sector person. I've worked on this topic for quite some time at the bank, both on the global side, what I'm doing now, as well in some bank region. So what are we trying to do to make sure that the financial sector contributes to our mission at the World Bank, which is to create a world free of poverty on a livable planet? And the financial sector contributes to that to help people be resilient because they have savings, they can benefit from payments, but they can also participate in the global economy. They have access to credit, they have access to equity, and we are discussing both individuals, households, as well as small and medium enterprises. So we are looking at that horizontally, and our job is to help our client countries on all these topics, in particular on the payment system side, to do a little bit of analytical work. What's working, what's not working, what are the lessons learned of what's happening around the globe, anticipate what is the agenda of tomorrow, and then finally engage with the standard setting bodies, the global financial architecture, to make sure that what is put in place serves the benefit of the emerging market and the people working in emerging markets. So making sure that there is no unintended consequence, and that whatever is being done on the global regulatory side serves our common purpose.
Yeah, no, and I would encourage anybody listening to go check out worldbank.org. You can get a sense of exactly how big the World Bank is, how many different initiatives they have. Today, we're going to be somewhat focused in our conversation. We're talking specifically about payments, well, faster payments, really is the topic of the day. So let's start by asking, how does kind of fast payments end up being a major initiative for the World Bank? What benefits are you expecting to see come out of increasing the speed at which money can move across borders?
So first, we are talking about what we call fast payment, real-time payment, instant payment. There are different terminology. And part of it is to make it as easy as possible and transparent and not expensive for everybody to be able to have access to retail payment and do transaction 24/7, 365 days per year. So this is really important. So we see that in our day-to-day life. But let's remember that in some of our client countries, you cannot do that. You still need to rely on cash, and it comes with its own challenges. So what we're trying to do is really help our client countries build payment systems that give the benefit of household and SMEs to these elements. So why do we do that? So let's take an example. Participate in the digital economy. You're a small firm in an emerging market. You want to access the global market to expand your customer base, being able to engage with fast payment domestically in your country, as well as cross-border, is really important to be able to grow your market and therefore grow your company and provide more jobs. So this is the focus. So it's about the payment system themselves, but it's also more generally about the ecosystem. What are the regulatory conditions? What's the role of the public sector? What's the role of the private sector? How to open market and facilitate the emergence of new entrants, but also of innovation. What we've seen over the last years is a tremendous change in the financial sector. You see that in advanced economy. You see that in emerging market. And a lot of that is coming from more innovation, from disruption, for putting competitive pressure on some of the incumbents so that the services that are offered are less expensive, much more customized to the need of the people, and making sure that it's also more seamless. And you also help the customers to be protected from fraud, to be protected from cybersecurity. So we are focusing on helping low and middle income countries so that they can benefit and catch up. It's a journey. You cannot do that completely overnight. So we adapt our support country by countries. And then we are also focusing on the transformative potential of fast payment so that they can really reap all the benefit of what's happening and facilitate innovation by the private sector.
Yeah, I mean, so much to balance, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things that becomes clear immediately is how many different people are involved in the equation, how many different factors you have to take into account. And so let's talk about now the impetus for our conversation here today. There's a new ambitious initiative called Project FASTT, which stands for Frictionless, Affordable, Safe, Timely Transactions. I love a good acronym. But
Yes.
let's talk about Project FASTT, and how you're using that project to kind of bring to fruition some of the pieces that you were just talking about, some of these high-level challenges that you're looking to solve.
So I think the starting point of all of this is that there is growing evidence that having access to financial services really makes the difference in terms of providing opportunity for job, for development to people in emerging market. And we've seen that during COVID. Look, in terms of resilience, people being able to have access directly or receive directly on their cell phone, the social transfer that were put in place, companies being able to trade and to have access to markets because they were able to do electronic transactions. So I think even though there is still work to be done to be able to demonstrate the link between these and outcomes and financial inclusion and fast payment, we saw the benefit in terms of growing and in terms of resilience and absorbing shock. So what we are trying to do is really help the countries interested and with which we are working on fast payment to get at the cutting edge and to benefit from the lessons that were achieved in other parts of the world. So we are doing analytical work. We have a tracker on fast payment. We have a flagship report that was called Future of Finance. We are doing case studies. We are looking at technical notes where really the audience are the practitioners and the policymakers on all these challenges, going from consumer protection to fraud, to the kind of services that can be open. And then we are providing technical assistance to the interested countries on how do you do it in practice and how do you put it in place, because we work essentially with a public sector counterpart, how do you put in place regulatory framework, financial infrastructure that really help the development and foster innovation. So for that, we look at what's happening in the world, and you have countries that have been extremely successful and with a lot of benefit for their population in doing that. So India is an example with their unified payment interface, UPI, where they move towards a cashless economy. The result of that is that you have 260 million people using this kind of services, and UPI represent now 62% of all digital payment in the country. So really very significant progress that has been made. And then you have another country, which is Brazil, with the PIX initiative, which was led by the Banco Central do Brazil. So usually central banks play a very important role in spearheading this effort. So it's tokenization of digital assets. They have worked on the entire ecosystem. So it's not just a very specific service provider. And they have created a brand. They have improved the user experience. Now you have 9 out of 10 small business in Brazil that are relying on PIX to accept transaction. More than 80% of the population has adopted this payment method, and you have 140 transactions per capita annually on average. So very significant improvement. So I'm just using these 2 examples because they are really results on the ground and demonstrating different ways of doing it. So a different approach in terms of the role of the state, the role of the private sector. So building on that, we are providing technical assistance, policy advice to client countries, and sometimes in very challenging environment, including in fragile state, and sometimes in more advanced country. So just to give a couple of examples, we are working, for instance, with the Western Balkan countries that are preparing themselves to adopt the EU payment regulation and other requirements that will allow them to join the single European payment area. So we are in more sophisticated countries, and in that case, the benefit is market access and economic integration with the region and with the EU. And they did that by establishing fast payment system. The benefit is reducing the cost of remittance. It's still 6.71% of the total transaction, which is quite high compared to the SDG target of 3%. So by meeting that target, they will be able to bring significant savings to their population that we estimate at €500 million for the countries in Western Balkan. Another example is Sierra Leone, where they launched a national payment switch, which is a new financial architecture. It's part of a program supported by the World Bank, and it interconnects 6 different commercial banks and provide payment interoperability with new players, not just banks, but also microfinance institutions, mobile money operator, and financial technology firm. So that was more a financial infrastructure one, but just to illustrate that we are really working with our client country with different angles and making sure that they benefit from the latest development globally.
Yeah, I mean, certainly some of those projects, it's easy to see kind of the benefits you're able to bring. And congratulations and kudos to everybody who was involved in kind of making that really significant impact. Let's talk about the other side, because obviously, you know, we've referenced this a little bit. It's not easy to do, right? There's a lot of different people that you have to try and balance, a lot of complexities to be aware of. What have been some of the biggest hurdles that you have encountered as you've looked to do this? You know, do we need more capability from the technical side? Is it a matter of changing behaviors? Is it a combination? Where do we need to do a little bit better to kind of continue to realize some of these gains?
So, yeah, it's a balance of the two. And indeed, it's trying to bring together a multiplicity of stakeholders and sometimes having different purposes. It also means sometimes focusing on certain category of population. So the gender divide, for instance, the gender gap in terms of financial inclusion is very significant. And there is quite strong evidence that digital financial services has helped reduce it. So then we can work, in our case, with the supervisor with a specific intent to close the gender gap. So just to illustrate also on how we think about it from a public policy perspective. So what do we see like 5 fundamental preconditions in terms of facilitated fast payment? So one, you need to have all the stakeholders on board. So that means a lot of market consultation and preparation to really onboard them. And sometimes it's also about creating bodies that are consultative, that brings all the players, public sector, private sector, consumers around the table. Then there are significant design choice. There is not one way to do it. It's very jurisdiction specific. So part of it is really to understand what are the main challenges in a given jurisdiction, but also on how they want to design. So to give an example, what role for the central bank? What role for the industry? Is it something that is going to be facilitated with the central bank, but led by the industry, or more role for the central bank? Finding the right balance in regulation so that you don't stifle innovation. Then technical capability and conducive regulatory framework. This is really important, the rules of the game, the level playing field. And what we've seen is really important is competition, open the market, allow new players to come on board, and interoperability, because that's really important so that you don't fragment the system domestically. And finally, think about the consumer. This is not just about the supply of financial services. It's also making that payment experience as beneficial as possible for the end client. So outside the financial sector, we also see that there are important preconditions. So one is the ability to connect, having a smartphone. So not everybody needs to have a super 5G, etc., but you need a minimum, and you need people being able to use your phone. Internet connectivity is really important, in particular when you want to have access to the broader digital economy. But you can also sometimes rely on just the mobile connectivity to allow for transfers based on USSD. So you have second best, and you can still work with the second best. Then there are a couple of cross-cutting legal provision that really help on cybersecurity, consumer protection, and fraud. So I want really to emphasize the consumer protection and the ability to help the customers benefit from these services. So there's a lot of work on that and digital financial education and literacy. And then final element, and that's where digital financial services has been so useful, which is available access point. So you don't need your brick and mortar bank in every quarter for people to be able to access, but you need an entry point. So the network of agents that we see in some countries is really important. So when you identify what are some of the features that really facilitate the emergence of digital financial services and fast payment, you can anticipate what are the others, because having all of that in place at the same time is not that easy. So then each country is specific, and you need to move where you have the most challenges, and it's across the spectrum. So this is what we are trying to do with our client countries, and helping them really understand specifically what are the pros and cons of the design option that they have in mind, of the governance option that they have in mind.
Certainly a lot of opportunities for some of the folks on the fintech innovation side to get involved here and make a significant difference. I mean, it's just some of the pieces that, as you were talking, I pulled out. Obviously, understanding consumers, understanding the needs of a general population is an area where I think there are certainly fintech companies that are doing very strong work, helping to understand from the compliance side and ease some of those regulatory burdens is also an area that we've seen companies doing really strong work. So I think, any innovators listening to this, you can start to get a sense of where you might find opportunities in the things that Jean is saying, and especially in the goals for what the World Bank is trying to do here. We are approaching the end of our time. I think we have time for one question, though. And I always like to end by dreaming big. Let's just kind of imagine everything goes exactly as you hope. What does the world look like 5 or 10 years from now if you're able to really push the pedal forward in terms of bringing about faster payments, faster transactions around the world? Can you kind of paint us a picture of who feels the biggest impact and what that impact could look like?
So that's a difficult question, because the technology and digital in the financial sector is moving so fast that sometimes it's a bit difficult to anticipate where we will be in 10 years. And I think we've seen innovation over the last 10 years that a lot of us would not have been able to dream of a couple of years ago. So this stuff where you take your cell phone and you scan a QR code and you can make immediate payment, etc. So I think we need to stay humble, but also anticipate some of the important changes that are going to come. I would highlight two things. One, and it's a lot at the country level, but it can have benefit also cross-border, is open banking and open finance. We really see a potential in terms of thinking much bigger and the power of data, managing the risk, because it comes with some risk, but lots of opportunities. So this is another one of these balancing act. But we think that can really change the experience, but also the kind of services that can be provided. So open banking, open finance, facilitating the delivery. Also, to come back to the point you mentioned earlier, very customized. So you can really adapt the product to the customer, because you have much more information on the customer, and you can make that much more seamless. So it's not just one financial product. It's the link between payment, credit, savings, insurance. Insurance is a very important element. So we see a lot of potential there by really the power of data and having much more information on the customers, because you get to the granular level and you don't rely anymore on credit registries and things like this. So we see a lot is already happening, but we have not yet completely reaped the benefit of that. And then the second aspect is on cross-border payment. This is really one of the element in terms of financial sector where a lot remains to be done. And it's not just a theoretical discussion on big payments between big banks. Look at remittances, how fast you can do transfers, how quickly the beneficiaries can receive it, reduce the cost so that they don't have to pay fees that are really reducing the income of the people. And we've seen again, as I mentioned, in the context of COVID, it has been really critical to resilience of households and SMEs. So there we see a lot of potential. There is a lot of work at the global level, but this is something where both through technology, thinking differently about the provision of financial services, but also coming together, all the countries in the world, and really how to change the rule of the game, how to bring a new service provider on cross-border payment, I think is something that I hope I will see over the next 10 years, and where we will make the difference for people on the ground everywhere, actually, not just in emerging market, but they will be the one benefiting the most from that.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I applaud the effort. I think it's an amazing goal. It's an amazing project. And certainly we hope that your ambitions are realized to their fullest extent. So again, we've been talking with Jean Pem, Global Director of Finance at the World Bank. Would encourage all of you listening to check out the work that they are doing, not just around the FASTT initiative, but also the many other projects that they have going on. Jean, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much, Greg. It's been my pleasure. A very interesting discussion. I look forward also to learning from all the service providers on how we can push the frontier of innovation in financial services. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, there's the challenge laid out, and we'll connect with you all later on. Thanks again.
The Finovate podcast is produced by Informa Connect in association with Provoke.fm Media. Check out Finovate.com for information on Finovate's upcoming shows and to learn how you can get involved. The discount code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% on tickets to all of our events. And you can email us at info@finovate.com for information on sponsoring, speaking, or demoing. Thanks for listening.